Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
The weather was the coldest in years. When I went to the lake, God told me Mike was not in Lake Seminole. They told me Mike drowned and got eaten by alligators, and there was no need for an investigation. They laughed at me and called me crazy. He didn't drown. He didn't get eaten by alligators. I had to find him and bring him home.
The disappearance of Mike Williams led police on a massive search through Florida's alligator-infested waters. But as it turns out, the green cold-blooded killers in our next case may have, in fact, been innocent. Hey everyone, my name is Ben, you're watching Letter M. Today we're looking into a case that took nearly 17 years to solve. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and I'll see you inside. It's called the Sunshine State, with its hundreds of miles of sandy beaches and avid sun worshippers. But in the South, one might be able to argue that football is actually the more popular pastime. High school football is no exception, and that seems to be where our story begins. Mike Williams played football for North Florida Christian High School, and that's where he met his high school cheerleader sweetheart, Denise Merrill. The two seemed like a perfect couple. Mike was a pretty popular guy. In addition to playing football, he became student council president and was a member of Key Club. But his life wasn't handed to him on a silver platter. He had to work hard for everything that came to him. His parents had put off building a new house and lived in a trailer home so that they could afford to pay tuition for their two boys to attend the private school. But the boys didn't let their parents' efforts go unanswered. They worked nights whenever they could to help ease the financial burden on their folks. When he wasn't playing sports, hanging with friends, or working, Mike took every chance he could get to go out duck hunting on his boat, out at Lake Seminole. He developed a fondness for it around the age of 15, and it stuck with him for the rest of his life. After high school, Mike attended Florida State University, where he majored in political science and city planning. But things really started taking off for him when he was hired as a real estate appraiser after college. With his strong work ethic, he built himself up to a six-figure income, often working late into the night and starting over again bright and early. He married his high school sweetheart, Denise, in 1994, and a baby girl soon followed. Life really seemed to be taking off for the pair.
We're just totally overwhelmed. She was due Tuesday, and she would have made me wait a whole nother year for Mother's Day, so she came yesterday so I could enjoy this day today with her.
It was unbelievable. I have a whole new respect for my wife and women in general and what they go through to bring a new child, new life into the world.
Together, they moved into a nice house in an upscale neighborhood. Mike's family loved Denise. They thought she was perfect for him. It seemed like Mike had it all, but something would happen late in 2000 that would change his family's life forever. On the morning of Mike and Denise's 6th wedding anniversary, Mike decided to go duck hunting at Lake Seminole early in the morning, telling his wife that he would be back by noon. He grabbed his shotgun and headed off in spite of an icy cold front moving in. I know what you're thinking, icy cold front in Florida. I thought the same thing. You wouldn't think it gets very cold in Florida, but in the winter months in the northern panhandle, temperatures can often drop below freezing. But that wasn't going to stop Mike. He headed out anyways, sure that he would be back in time to leave for the romantic getaway that they had planned. The time slowly ticked away. Noon came and passed, but Mike hadn't returned home. Then evening came, and Mike wasn't answering his cell phone. Denise started getting really worried. She called Mike's best friend, Winchester, along with her father, and together with law enforcement began searching for Mike out at Lake Seminole. They didn't have much luck that night. The temperature dropped to below freezing, 19 degrees Fahrenheit. Storms began rolling in, and strong gusts of wind began sweeping over the lake. Even ice had begun to form around the lake's edge. The search team was forced to put off looking for Mike until the next morning. That's when they found his boat. His boat was floating aimlessly in a cove on the western side of the lake, just a few hundred yards from the shore where they had located his Ford Bronco. When they reached the boat, they were disappointed to discover only his shotgun and a few hunting decoys. Mike was nowhere to be seen. The next several weeks turned into a large-scale search, with helicopters combing the shoreline, looking for any sign of life. Divers scoured the water, hoping to find any clues as to what might happen to him. Weeks, and then months passed by, with no trace of Mike being found anywhere. Many had died out on the lake over the years, but in every instance, a body had always been recovered. Mike would be the first person to have died in Lake Seminole, who had completely vanished into thin air. Lake Seminole covers an area of 37,000 acres and is known to have some pretty large alligators. Authorities began to speculate that Mike had accidentally drowned and that his body had been eaten by alligators, as it hadn't turned up anywhere. It was a suggestion that Mike's wife, Denise, seemed to be all too satisfied with. Just 6 months after Mike went missing, she moved successfully to have the courts declare Mike legally dead, without even telling Mike's family. Now, typically it takes 5 years in the state of Florida to declare a missing person deceased, but some evidence had just surfaced on the lake that Denise used to make her case. A pair of waders, a hat, a jacket, a working flashlight, and Mike's hunting license all turned up in the water, close to the location where Mike's boat had been found. And to top it all off, all the articles were in pristine condition. No blood, no tears, no bite marks, nothing. Mike's family was suspicious from the start. These articles turning up in pristine condition, months after whole teams of search parties had been over the area with a fine-tooth comb, made it seem obvious that the evidence had been planted. Furthermore, they had been doing their own research, and they learned that alligators go into an almost hibernative-like state when temperatures get cold, in which they stop eating. And neither do alligators swallow people whole. They believe more than ever before that Mike had been the victim of foul play. And nobody fought harder to get to the truth of the matter than his own mother, Cheryl Williams. Cheryl fought tenaciously to have her son's disappearance reinvestigated by law enforcement. The trouble was that treating Mike's case initially as a drowning incident all but botched the case as a criminal investigation. Mike's vehicle had been returned to the family instead of searched for prints. The entire area had been destroyed for evidence by scores of search teams moving up and down the shores. Footprints and anything else found at the scene could have been left by a countless number of people. It would take Cheryl 3 long years to get investigators back on the case, and by then, it was almost hopeless coming up with any new physical evidence. In the meantime, Mike's mom had a falling out with Denise. Denise became very angry with Cheryl for not accepting that Mike had drowned and was eaten by alligators. She told Cheryl in so many words that she needed to move on with her life and that she didn't want to see or hear anything about Mike anymore. Cheryl was shocked when Denise issued her final ultimatum. She was to drop the investigation business and stop pursuing the search for Mike, or she wouldn't be allowed to see her granddaughter, Ansley, anymore. Sadly, Denise would make good on that promise. While new physical evidence seemed to be a lost cause, there were leftover questions from the missing person investigation that just didn't add up. There was the gear found belonging to Mike, recovered months later after the area had already been thoroughly searched. But also, Mike's brother pointed out that the shotgun recovered from the boat was not the shotgun that Mike used for duck hunting. Other interesting facts had also come to light. It became known that Denise had collected at minimum $1.5 million from a life insurance policy and other death benefits. Other estimates put the total closer to $2 million. She had filed for the insurance claim only 19 days after Mike went missing, but was only able to collect on it after the state declared Mike legally deceased. Could that have been the reason Denise seemed to be in such a hurry to declare Mike dead, and why she got so angry with his mother for continuing the search? Another shocker followed. Denise and Mike's best friend, Brian Winchester, had been having an affair for the last 3 years. The life insurance policy taken out on Mike was drawn up by Brian Winchester himself, who was a life insurance agent. And when Denise ended up remarrying in 2005, can you guess who ended up being the lucky groom after divorcing his wife? You guessed it. All these things were highly suspicious, but nothing was provable. Was Mike even aware that this insurance policy had been taken out on him? Did Brian and Denise tie the knot so they wouldn't have to testify against one another? These were all questions that Mike's mother and brother would be left turning over and over again in their minds for well over the next decade. The investigation had hit a brick wall. Many years would pass, and Mike's mother did all she could. She wrote 2,600 letters to the governor of Florida. She took out ads in newspapers asking for information. She put up billboards, held up signs on street corners. She did everything she could to keep the case alive. She was not willing to give up finding out the truth about Mike, and held on tightly to the hope that he was still alive somewhere. That brick wall that the investigation hit was high and impenetrable, but finally it seemed to be developing some cracks. There was trouble brewing in Paradise. The marriage between Denise and Brian was on shaky ground, and the two of them eventually separated in 2012. Against Brian's wishes, Denise went on to file for divorce in 2015, a move that, over the next year, would send Brian Winchester over the edge. On an early spring morning in 2016, Denise was pulling out of her subdivision on the way to work when a crazed Brian Winchester, from his hiding place, climbed over the seats in the back of her vehicle and held her at gunpoint behind the driver's seat. A frantic Denise was able to talk him out of what he planned to do next, but instead of not turning him in to the police like she'd promised, Denise took the initiative.
Just give me a rundown of what happened today.
We're almost in the 4th year of our separation and divorce. Another divorce date is looming Wednesday. So I walked out of my house about 9:10. So then I pulled out on the Mississippi Road. I was calling my sister, and this person starts climbing out of the very back, and I couldn't tell at first who it was, but then immediately I knew who it was, but I was screaming in the phone, help me. I didn't know if she had picked up yet or not. So I was screaming, help me, and then he grabbed the phone. So I don't know if he turned it off. I don't know how. I never saw the phone again. But he was up and grabbing me, and he pulled my face pretty hard, and he goes, he's cussing, you will turn here, you will turn here, blah, blah, blah. And I kept going straight down Mississippi, and I didn't do what he told me to do. So then he goes, I'm going to effing hurt you if you don't, you turn here. And I kept going straight again. And I turned around and I go, what do you mean hurt me? And he pulled out a gun, like a gun, not a hunting gun, but like a gun he would kill someone with. And he put it right here in my ribs. He put it right here, and he goes, with this, and he pressed it in there. You will turn. Well, I kept, in my head, I was like, I'm making it to CVS because that's our CVS. But anyway, so then I pulled into CVS, and he was like, turn here, because CVS has like back parking, and he took the wheel and was trying to force it to turn, and I don't know how, but I just like took the wheel back. And for us, the fact that we didn't wreck was unbelievable, and I took it back, and I parked right at the front door in the spot that was right against the grass, so like the camera's right there, like I knew because I go there all the time that there are cameras there. So I parked right there at the front. So he's like in this seat, but he's leaned forward holding the seatbelt together so I can't get out, because I had pictured that I was going to just get out and go running, screaming into CVS. That's what I thought in my head. But he held me and I couldn't. Of course, at the beginning, especially, he was crazed. And then as we were talking, I was just kind of agreeing with whatever he was saying. And I was like, I know that you love me. And he's recently lost his son. His son has decided to move in with, he had joint custody and now he doesn't. And so he said, I've lost my son, I lost you, I have nothing to live for. And I was like, well, Brian, you're the only one who can change. And so I just kept saying, you've got to stop living that way. You've got, you could get us all back if you'll just turn your life around, because he was a Christian at one point. And I was like, if you'll just turn back to the Lord. So the whole time I'm turned this way, I'm buckled in, but he's calm, he's calming down. And so, but the gun's still right there, and I'm just like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And he's like, what am I doing? I could tell he was, and I was like, I don't know. I know you want to talk to me, but this is not the way to do it. I know. What have I done? It's like he kind of woke up, like, what have I done? What have I done? And I was like, listen, let me take you. Let's go to your dad's office. The dad owns the business. I said, let's go to your dad's office and talk to him. I said, I don't want you arrested. I just want to get past this. This can be your rock bottom. Do you think this is your rock bottom? What do you think? So, I could tell. So he was, and I said, Brian, let me go to work. Let me go to work, show my face. People are going to wonder where I'm at. You call me at work. and then I'll come out and meet with you and your dad. I will not call the police, I promise. I promised a million times that I wouldn't call the police. And I said, and I'll meet you out there and we'll talk about this. This can be, I didn't say a new beginning, but I said, like, this can be the end of all this, blah, blah. So then he went from the seat to the back row and put his knees there and started pulling stuff out of the back and shoving it into a backpack. And I saw sheets, I want to say plastic, maybe it was plastic, I don't know, but it was maybe a sheet and a plastic something, I don't know, but it was fabric looking, and he shoved all that in the backpack. Then he had a bottle, which it was like, those old-timey bleach bottles that are like white with the sprayer thing, a huge one.
It was like a spray thing?
Yeah. He had that, put that in the backpack, and then something else, and when I saw the bleach, I was like, oh my God, like I just kind of lost, in my head, I kind of lost it. And so it was something else, like a tool or something, not a hammer, but something like that. I don't know. And then he shoved that in the backpack, and then I said, Brian, where's the gun? I don't want the gun anywhere near me. Where's the gun? It's right here. It was on the floor at that point, I guess because he knocked it or something, I don't know. But he picked it up, and he put it in the backpack, and he zipped the backpack up. And then he opened up a little zipper of the front backpack, took his keys out, and then he starts crying. What have I done? What have I done? It's too late for us. And I know it's not. I'll just let me go to work and I'll meet you later. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know. But all he wanted was to talk to me, for me to call the divorce off. And intermittently he would say he was going to kill himself. A lot he said that. Because I was like, are you planning on ending both of our lives? Like as he got calmer at CVS, I said, are you planning on, ending both of our lives today? Well, mine. I'm planning on mine.
It looks like Brian came awfully prepared. He brought along plastic, a spray bottle of bleach. Was he planning on cleaning up after he killed himself? Why would anyone bring cleanup supplies like this when they were planning a murder-suicide? So it really seems like Denise barely made it out of this confrontation. Interestingly, this interview would take a bit of a turn, as investigators, the first of which was her brother-in-law, attempted to press her into opening up about what really happened to Mike.
To me, him bringing those things, hiding in the car, directing you, he had it thought out.
Obviously.
Okay, and I know I keep telling you about it, but I'm telling you, he killed Mike. And he did it for you because he wanted you. And I know that's hard, and I know it hurts. But by God, I'm telling you, that's what happened. How old was Ainsley then?
Baby.
Huh?
A baby.
Not even a year. He didn't care. I saw, Deborah and I saw Mike the night before with Ainsley at the mall. And that's the last time I ever saw him. He didn't care about you. He didn't care about Ainsley. He only cares about himself. He made Mike disappear, and he was going to make you disappear today. And you have got to get that in your head. You don't ever have to tell me or anybody else about it, but at some point it needs to come out because he did it. I am telling you. I don't think you had anything to do with it, but he held that over you, and I'm sure at some point he told you something.
But yeah, this person today couldn't have done anything. And still could, I guess. Because he's going to be so mad about this.
The person you saw today could kill Mike.
He could kill anyone.
And what we're talking about, Denise, I would never tell Deborah or your mom or anybody. This is just me and you. I swear I would never tell them. But were you sleeping with Brian the day that Mike disappeared?
No.
It didn't happen until later?
No, yeah.
During the later trial, Brian's ex-wife, Kathy Thomas, would testify to having a threesome with Brian and Denise before the time that Mike went missing. She suspected them of having an affair as early as 1999, and she said whenever they went out together, just the three of them, she felt like the third wheel. You can tell Denise isn't comfortable about where this line of questioning was headed, and so she begins to drift back into her own situation.
Well, but he wanted you, there's no doubt about it.
I can't even imagine. And I've never seen a person like this today. And this is why I didn't want to do it this way. This is why I didn't want to set him off and make him mad. And coming here, he knows he can't trust me because I promised him over and over I wouldn't do this. And that's why I didn't want to do this.
Yes. You knew he would kill you.
Yeah. Well, to get out of the situation, yeah, I mean, there was a gun there.
The conversation goes into Brian's drug use and him having prostitutes over at his house, etc. And her brother-in-law just lets her talk. The second detective to question Denise would lay into her pretty hard.
I'm with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Okay. I've literally known you and I've known your family for many, 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 many years. Okay. You know, I used to know your gate code by heart and going in your neighborhood. I know your house very well. You know, I know when you took the carpet out, the whole works. When y'all were going towards CVS, it's what I can understand. He wanted to turn around and go the other way.
He kept saying go to the roundabout, and I think he was wanting me to go back, but I
Towards your
wasn't
house?
really listening. I was, maybe, but I wasn't really listening. I was just trying to get
Yeah.
to CVS.
Where do you think Mike's buried at?
Oh, I have no idea
Any speculation on that?
on where he's buried.
Buried.
I mean, I believe,
You don't really believe he died on the lake.
I do.
Why?
I just always have. That's what I believe. And I have, from when he was saying roundabout, I don't know, I talked with the last two people and I can't remember if he wanted me to turn left or right.
No, that's not what I'm talking about.
Oh.
Were you and I guess you, Mike, Kathy, and Brian, y'all were pretty close before Mike disappeared, right?
Yeah.
How close were y'all?
I mean, I would say we talked pretty much every day. We were very close.
Yeah.
I'm still very close with Kathy.
Apparently you were really close, okay? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Me and Kathy she's texting me right now, so we're still very close.
Okay. If I say we're totally aware of all the videos, you probably know what I'm talking about.
If you say what?
The videos?
I would have to see them.
Well, that's not gonna happen. But
Okay.
you're clueless when I say videos.
Yeah,
You, Kathy, and Brian?
I would have to see them.
Yeah. You have no idea what I'm talking about. Don't say you've never seen it.
No, I'm just starting to feel very uncomfortable.
Okay.
But
Well, I've been uncomfortable for a long time because we needed some things on this case.
I guess what I'm saying is about the Mike situation that you want to talk about. I don't want to talk about this right now.
Would you talk about it later?
I don't want to talk about this right now. I want to get this settled first.
This is settled.
It's not settled to me, though. I have not gone down. I have not filed the restraining order, and that's what is pressing on me so bad. So I understand that you want to talk about this, but this is what I want to do. This is what has to be done.
Do you think he's responsible for Mike's disappearance?
I do not, and I never have. I would have never married him if I thought that. I would have never wanted so bad to have children with him. In my mind and in my heart, no. David is my brother-in-law, and he was just sitting here talking to me about trying to get me to understand that, that my life was in danger today.
Absolutely.
And then having me to look back on that whole situation now from a different point of view. And I'm definitely going to do that. But do I believe right here in this moment that he had anything to do with that? Absolutely not.
I'm going to leave on this note. I was hoping you could fill in some of the pieces of that puzzle. You haven't. We arrest Brian, he might. Okay?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Well, just think about what you said. All right?
Okay.
Let me step out, see if I can find somebody to take
Thank you.
Sorry.
So it was a no-go. Denise didn't really have much time to prepare for this interview. She didn't know she was going to be kidnapped, and she could hardly have known that the subject would change to her missing former husband. Still, I wonder what would have happened if she turned on Brian here. At his trial, Denise read a tearful letter to the court, pleading with the judge to put Brian away. Brian was visibly agitated.
He grabbed the steering wheel. He shoved the gun in my rib cage, screaming profanities uncontrollably at me. I will never be the same. I would never wish this on anyone. I can't sleep. I can't eat because I only see him rising up out of the back of the car. Because all I feel is the gun shoved in my ribs. I can't have peace. because I only hear his voice screaming and cussing at me. Please don't let him out.
Brian would receive a sentence of 20 years behind bars for this incident, but turning on Brian and going to the police would be the beginning of the end for Denise. Was it a coincidence that the very next day, after almost exactly 17 years, Mike's body was discovered? Brian Winchester was talking. In exchange for immunity from the crime, he gave all the sordid details to police. How he went behind Mike's back, his affair with Denise, how they even cheated on each other, and finally how they conspired to murder Mike Williams. Officers would pay a visit to her workplace at Florida State University, arresting Denise on charges of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and also an accessory after the fact. Here's Brian at the trial in his own words about what he and Denise did to Mike.
Mike and I went to high school together and got to know each other very well. We were very good friends. We continue to be friends all through college and all through our getting married, and we were very good friends. He was a very good friend. Denise and Mike were high school sweethearts. My wife, Kathy, and I were high school sweethearts. We all dated in high school and off and on through college, and then ended up all getting married. At first, things were really good, I think, with all of us, but I was not a great husband, and spent a lot of time away doing hobbies and just stupid stuff. I found a note in my first wife, Kathy's purse, and basically I came to realize that she had been cheating on me or was cheating on me. And after that happened, I began to look outside of my marriage. I guess I had a lot of motivations, but it led me to eventually end up with Denise. It snowballed really fast. We started meeting in hotels. We started meeting during the workday. We started meeting whenever we had the opportunity. If Mike was at work, Mike worked a lot. He really was a workaholic, quite frankly. She was not happy with that. So we started meeting very regularly and having sex very regularly. I think it was gradual that we, the more we were together, the more we wanted to be together. And the more we griped about Kathy and Mike, the more we wanted to be together. It just kind of, it just got worse and worse. I mean, it just snowballed. We just, I don't even know how to describe it, but so yes, we eventually started talking about options and ways that we could be together. And Denise, because of the way she was raised, because of her pride, I guess I can't say all the reasons, but she did not want to get divorced, and stated that she would not get divorced, but she still had a desire for us to be together, which narrowed the options even further, I guess. It was all of our conversations and planning and everything, I would say is very mutual. I'm not going to sit here and say that Denise planned everything and I was just a dumb guy who went along with what she wanted to do. I mean, I instigated a lot of it. I helped come up with ideas. I planned a lot of things. So over the year and a half prior to Mike's death, we discussed several options and alternatives of ways that we could be together. One of the options, Mike worked a lot at night up at his office, and one of the options was that we could make it look as if there was a burglary of some sort up at his office, and that he got shot in some type of robbery or something up at his office. Denise didn't like that idea. I didn't like that idea, and Denise didn't like that idea, but primarily because there would be an investigation if something like that occurred. Another scenario that we came up with was Mike and I going on a hunting trip together, and there being an accident where both he and I ended up in the water, and he drowned and I did not. Denise liked this idea because I don't know how to word it exactly, but she felt better, I guess, about herself, or we could feel better about ourselves if there was a chance that he could make it out of it. I mean, I think there was even talk about, well, it'll be up to God what happens and not us. It won't be a murder. It'll be, an accident. It's kind of screwed up thinking, but that was a scenario that she could live with, I guess. Anyway, so I think Mike made it pretty clear that this anniversary trip, it was going to be expected that this was, going to be their starting over date, that it had been long enough since Annalie had been born that it was time for them to start having sex again. I think he was kind of putting some pressure on Denise about that, and she did not want to go on that trip, did not want that trip to happen. In some places, you can only hunt on Wednesdays and on the weekends, Saturday, Sundays. So we knew our window of opportunity was closing, basically. So it was decided that that was the plan we were going to go with. So the plan with Mike was that I would meet him at a gas station on Thomasville Road up near the overpass. Well, the overpass I don't think was there at that point, but meet him up at a gas station up near the McDonald's up there. And I met him there. I had told him that we were going to go to a secret special spot to go hunting, and that he needed to bring his waders. I had to make sure that he brought his waders because the belief was there was kind of like there still is probably like a duck hunter's myth that if you fall overboard with your waders, you're going to sink really quick and drown. So I had to make sure that he brought his waders. And so I told him about this, great spot that we were going to go, and he needed to bring his waders. So I met him at the gas station, and I told him when he drove up, I was real paranoid about phones and him calling me and there being a record of him calling me. So I told him that my battery was dead on my phone, that there was no reason for him to call me as we were driving over to the lake, because normally we would have called and talked to each other on the phone or even ridden together. I don't even remember how or why I told him that I needed to use my vehicle instead of just going in his. But so I followed him over to the lake. He had his boat behind his Bronco, and I followed him in my white Suburban.
What lake?
Lake Seminole, which is about 50 minutes away. And I had told him what landing we needed to go to, and so we pulled into the landing and launched the boat. And I said something. I had to make sure that he had the waders on, so I said something about we're running low on time, or we're going to be really pushed. And I told him something like we're running late. We need to go ahead and put our waders on, here and now, before we get in and go. And so we both did that. And because I knew where we were going hunting, I was in the back of the boat driving, and he was in the front. I know I was very concerned about the time. Everything had taken longer than what I had anticipated, and I had to be back in town early enough in time to meet my father-in-law for my alibi trip to occur. And so we headed out, and there was a deep area, maybe a couple hundred yards from the landing that we put in at. And we got to that area that I knew was a deep area, and I don't remember exactly how I got him to stand up, but I don't know if I pretended something was wrong with the motor or the weight in the boat was off or something, but I basically stopped the boat and got him to stand up, and when he did, I pushed him into the water.
What happened next?
So he was in the water, and he was like struggling, and the motor of the boat was still running, and I pulled off just a little bit to get kind of away from him so that he couldn't reach back into the boat. And I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know if he was trying to swim, or I didn't know what was going on, but what I came to find out, or eventually realized, was he was taking the waders and the jacket off. And he got those off, and I think I forgot to tell you about this part before, but I remember now that area of the lake had a lot of snags, a lot of dead trees that come up out of the water, and there's a lot of stumps that come up out of the water. And he swam over to one of those stumps and held on to it. And he was panicking, and I was panicking, and none of this was like going well I thought it was going to go. And I didn't know what to do. But he started to yell. And I didn't know how to get out of that situation. And so I had my gun in the boat. And so I loaded my gun, and I made 1 or 2 circles around, and I ended up circling closer towards him, and he was in the water, and as I passed by, I shot him.
Where did you shoot him?
In the head.
What happened next?
So when I shot him, it was dark, and there was a bright flash when that happened, and I didn't want to see what happened, so I closed my eyes when the instant of that flash happened, and the boat was moving as this happened, and so I turned back around and came back to where he was, and got to the stump, and I knew I couldn't leave him there being shot, so I was going to have to do something to cover this up. And I reached down, and he wasn't far under the water, but like my whole arm got wet. And I remember wondering, like, how am I going to explain that my arm is soaking wet? And I was afraid I was going to have to jump into the water. But I reached down, and I grabbed a hold of him, And I was closer, because of where I had driven the boat, I was closer to another landing, just a little dirt landing that was further down the shoreline. And so I decided to motor the boat and pull him over to that landing over there. So I dragged him in the water over to that dirt ramp and left the boat, left him, ran back down to where our trucks were parked, got my truck, came back to where he was, backed my truck to the edge of the water, and let the tailgate down, and ended up putting him in the back of my Suburban, and I pushed the boat back out into the water to make it look like, you know, his boat was out there and he had drowned or disappeared or what, you know. I didn't give a lot of thought as to what was going to happen after that. I was just panicked as to getting out of that area and covering this up. My dad and I went out on the lake and searched for Mike. He was searching and I was just lying.
My understanding, a weather front came through and it rained during that evening.
There was a storm that came through that night. I think we got off the lake before that happened, but you know, my dad wanted to look at it. I think we were the last ones on the lake, and my dad didn't want to give up. My dad loved Mike.
That would be a good time to take a break. Why don't we take 10 minutes?
Now, it wasn't an easy case to win. Denise's lawyer would argue that there was very little physical evidence. Everything hinged on the testimony of Brian Williams, an admitted liar and murderer, with a grudge against Denise. But I think that in this case, all of the circumstantial evidence weighed in favor of his testimony. The jury returned with a verdict of guilty, and Denise was sentenced to life in prison for murder and 30 years in prison for conspiracy, to be served concurrently. Denise would appeal the court's decision, and in 2020, the murder conviction was overturned, leaving her only with the conspiracy sentence of 30 years. On the bright side, Mike's daughter Ansley was awarded all of his assets, and her mother Denise signed over the insurance money to avoid prosecution on insurance fraud. It may be a difficult road, but I hope that one day Cheryl will be able to get a chance to start over with her granddaughter. They've both lost a lot, but if that bridge can be crossed, we still have each other.
For her entire life, Ansley was raised in a house with the murderers of her father while being denied the love of her father's family. She was told that Grandmama Cheryl was crazy and would hurt her. I have had no relationship with her since she was 5.5 years old. For the rest of my life, when I try to sleep at night, I will see my son clinging to a tree stump in Lake Seminole in the dark, knowing that his best friend is trying to kill him. I hear his voice screaming for help. I wasn't there to help him. It will haunt me forever. My son's horrific death demands justice.
Thanks everyone for joining me today for the story of the disappearance of Mike Williams. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and make sure to leave a comment down below. What are your thoughts about the appeals court overturning the murder conviction? Do you think Denise could have gotten away with it if she'd flipped on Brian during that interview with detectives? I'll see you on the next case. Letter M signing off, and always remember,